So the Greenest Region Compact, I'll tell you what that is and what we think it can do. We had a survey, the follow-up survey to this Greenest Region Compact, which was adopted. We'll tell you about that. And then there was an achievements inventory. We tallied environmental achievements throughout the region, which is really interesting results, and read a bunch of sustainability plans. We read all that we could find, and we used them to synthesize a new Greenest Region Compact. And we'll tell you how we plan on using all this data to come up with a new Greenest Region Compact. So first, introduction to the Greenest Region Compact. This was a document that was created somewhat in challenge to Mayor Daley when Mayor Daley was the founder of the Metropolitan Mayors Caucus, this regional council of governments, and declared that he wanted to be the greenest city in the country. And the rest of the region said, well, that's a terrific idea, we'd like to join you, and decided to embark on this Greenest Region Compact, or adopt the Greenest Region Compact. And this was a simple pledge. I'll show you the details of that in the next slide. But it was a pledge towards environmental actions that could make a difference regionally and were achievable by municipalities. And we had very strong participation with the Greenest Region Compact. So this was a document that was formally adopted by 96 cities and towns throughout the Northeast region. And the formal adoption means that it went through City Council and the mayor signed it. So this was a high level of commitment. And the adoptions, the documents were adopted around 2007, 2008. But there was unfortunately little follow-up in the time following the initial adoption. And then some of the activities that we had proposed as a pledge were no longer as relevant. They're not as relevant in 2014 when we did the study, or 2015, because markets changed and some regulations changed. And then, finally, the sustainability planning has evolved so much. So when we started this in 2007, climate change wasn't even a part of this original pledge, and of course it's very relevant now. And communities have been such strong leaders in sustainability planning, we felt it was time for an update. And so that was the reason that we decided to start on this project of updating the Greenest Region Compact. And wanted to have it be something that was inclusive. So with all of the work that was done by so many participants in community sustainability planning and partner organizations who have excellent programs and ideas, we wanted this to be a very inclusive process to come up with a new Greenest Region Compact. We wanted the environmental priorities to be by consensus and that we could align with higher goals. So at the local level, the community goals that are stated, we thought would be great if they also led towards regional progress or national or even international global progress, but that all of the goals that we came up with for the new Greenest Region Compact should be something that there was a lot of buy-in for. So that was the reason for having this synthesis process that you'll see as I move forward. And primarily because so much has been written and so many programs already exist, that there was a hope not to be duplicative, that we wouldn't come up with great new ideas, but that we'd really listen to what has already been written about sustainability planning and what's already been done, both by communities and by partners at all levels with not-for-profit organizations and government agencies. So as Amy said, the goal is that we have this alignment of local needs and issues with regional and national ones, so that we would have greater impact by working in alignment and working together. And the short-term goal here is that we have a new framework for the Greenest Region Compact that is indeed modeled on existing sustainability plans, using what was already been done and written. We incorporate successful programs, policies, and other indicators of environmental achievements by municipalities. So in other words, if there's an existing program that simply makes sense to promote, we do that rather than create new efforts. And as I said before, that we have this alignment. So we did this project. We were funded by the Chicago. We are funded by the Chicago Community Trust, the Searle Funds at the CCT, and the Metropolitan Mayors Caucus initiated this project and retained CB&I, which is a sustainability consulting firm that looked at the data. The study set was our 275 Metropolitan Mayors Caucus members throughout the Northeast region, and then we picked up additional communities throughout Illinois that kept appearing with high levels of sustainability or that we knew had a sustainability plan that we could incorporate. So expanded our region slightly, and it's now 290 communities in Illinois. The methodology for the actual study was the survey of those who had already adopted the Greenest Region Compact. We looked at a tally of environmental achievements and read all the sustainability plans. We looked at 40 and narrowed it down to 29 sustainability plans that were very comparable in terms of their format that we could compare side by side, or stacked is the way I'd like to visualize it more when we're thinking about alignment. I think of stacking the sustainability plans to see where issues of importance align. And then we used all of this information to synthesize a new consensus framework for the Greenest Region Compact, which is called, there's GRC, the Greenest Region Compact, and GRC2 is the proposed new one. So not surprisingly, we had surveyed of the 96 adopters of the Greenest Region Compact. I only put up one slide of the results because it's what you might expect, and it's not totally discouraging, but a little more than a third of the survey respondents said that the Greenest Region Compact had some impact on their environmental initiatives in their communities. Just as many, actually a little more, said they weren't sure, partly because there wasn't communication over a long period of time that was adopted after more than 7 years, and some didn't think it had much impact. What we actually found, I'll get to that when I'll show you the benefits of sustainability planning. We found that those who had adopted the Greenest Region Compact actually performed higher, even though they don't necessarily attribute Greenest Region Compact to their success or to their achievements. We think that underscores the importance of sustainability planning. Up on the screen now is the Greenest Region Compact pledge, and these were the top 15, or these were the 15 activities that municipalities agreed to take some action on. They didn't have to pick every one of them. They were required to make progress on 7 of them, and if you see the ones that are bolded now, those are the priority ones. So it was just selected as priority. There we go. Okay, so the ones that are in green were the ones that, according to our survey results of those who responded to the Greenest Region Compact survey in 2014, that they showed some strong progress in. And I don't need to go through all of them, but water we seem to have some activities on, and we made some good headway with green power. And then finally, the ones that are highlighted in brown were the ones that were not technically included in our survey because we had other ways of finding out about them. For example, the CFL light bulb distribution was something that the Mayor's Caucus was involved in at the beginning, so we didn't ask that in the survey question. And e-waste recycling was one of those issues where technology and regulation had changed, so we didn't even ask the question as to whether or not they achieved the goal as it was laid out in the Greenest Region Compact, because we knew the outcome, and that was that it was a state legislation, state regulations had taken over the e-waste recycling issues. Okay, so one of the most interesting part of this study that I really enjoy presenting and learning about was this achievements inventory. And this methodology, the reason that I suggested we look at this was that we shouldn't have to ask communities, do you care about tree planting or taking care of your trees if you're already a Tree City USA, or if you've already are a WaterSense partner with the US EPA that already says that you're actively engaged in water conservation, or if you've got an energy efficiency grant, we know that you're undertaking energy efficiency retrofits. So the methodology was then to tally achievements. We looked at a whole long list of achievements, 95 of them across the region and then some. We didn't ask communities for their achievements. We just looked at third-party lists. And if you look in the box, these were awards, certifications, grants, membership, and then policies and programs only as they were tallied by third party. So, for example, one of the policies was an anti-idling policy. Well, the Mayor's Caucus tracked that. Or another one would be complete streets, where we found sources of lists of communities that had adopted the policies. And so those were the ones that we reported on. We know we didn't pick up everything that was being done, but what was really interesting about it is that this was objective across a very large region. And we found there was a lot of achievements. We also wanted to just pick up achievements that there had to be some effort. So a good example of that would be having lead professional. So working with the U.S. Green Building Council, we got lists of lead AP professionals, and that were registered in their communities, but we only gave credit to that municipality for an achievement if they were actually employed by that, if they were on staff basically at the municipality. So that's kind of how we equalized the results in these achievements. And we followed, as best we could, our 5 original Greenest Region Compact categories. If you remember that slide that had the 12 or 15 environmental strategies that was in the areas of air, land, waste, water, and energy. And we found that to be very limiting, that many of the achievements that we found of these 95 achievements didn't fit those categories. And we added climate change and sustainability stewardship. And these are general ones like having green buildings or having a lead AP on staff or an environmental commission. So not to be confusing, but we call these GRC +2, not to be confused with GRC 2. So GRC +2 was this interim stage where we had 7 categories that we sorted all of the environmental achievements into. And just so you recognize the types of achievements, here's a list of the top 20. And they're sorted by, the green will jump out as the land management ones, and you can scan the list there. You'll see energy efficiency grants rather high up there, and Tree City USA is the number 5 category. The pink one's, just if you're scanning the list very quickly, is energy efficiency, and the purple is the sustainability stewardship category. And that slide doesn't show very well, but just again, so you get a sense of what we were working with, we sorted these with the type of achievement, the category it was in that GRC +2 category, whether it's energy, land, water, etc., and then the source that we got them from. So as I said, it was very objective. We didn't talk to any communities about it. It was a rather stealthy observation, but resulted in some really interesting findings. So again, if this is all, if you're following along on the slides here, you can see in these 7 categories, we found a total of more than 3,500 environmental achievements from 290 communities. And the big achievers are in the areas of land, anything having to do with land stewardship, and energy. And energy is both renewable energy as well as energy efficiency. Climate change, in terms of achievements, that's an interesting one. We can maybe have some questions on that at the end. There weren't many ways to track environmental achievements, at least objectively, third party, from the methodology we were using. And then just to present that in a more visual format, here are the environmental achievements that were, these are normalized for example, there were lots of achievement opportunities in land and energy, but these are normalized. So it's a fairly equitable distribution, but you can see that energy, land, and waste, there's a lot of achievements in, with water being the next level down. And then by type, it was interesting as we were getting feedback, and we got a lot of feedback and some guidance as we were doing this along the way. And we were somewhat challenged by why you're using grants as an indicator. One, it's very easy to track who's getting grants. I think it does show what the types of investments and priorities are. For example, energy, there are lots and lots of grants in energy. But it's really interesting to me here too, if you look at this, 25% of the achievements were in programs which there were not necessarily funds available for. So the initial query that we had that said maybe grants wouldn't be a very fair indicator proved to be, the way I look at this is that municipalities local governments are doing an awful lot of programs, whether on their own, not totally grant dependent, and I think that's really indicative. As you can see, for example, awards at only 7% of achievements, those are meant to be competitive and somewhat exclusive by nature. Okay, and then this is the mix of achievements, and if you'll recall the colors, again, if you have something that you're a strong champion of, whether it be energy or land, you can see these mix of achievements. And these are this is an analysis of the number of environmental achievements that were attributed to each community. And we grouped them into tiers for analysis. So communities in the elite category of the 290 that we looked at, there were only 4 that we considered heads and shoulders above the rest, and these are the larger cities. And then you can see the mix. That's where you'll see climate change is the orange one. In those level of achievements. And then the high achievements, these are also communities that were a surprising mix, at least throughout the northeastern region, that were not just the very large cities. They were an interesting mix of communities that we would think of as green, and some that we wouldn't think of as green. And some of those communities in there, for example, Villa Park and Carroll Stream, if you know the suburban areas, are not necessarily presenting themselves as very green, but they had a high number of environmental achievements. Now the interesting thing about this study, this tells us where efforts are in terms of categories and types of achievements, but more importantly, it showed that there were lots of achievements. I think my next slide, here we go, this is the better slide for tiers if I can advance. So if you look at the medium and the low achievers, are where I think we'd want to concentrate our efforts. The very low will, maybe they're not interested or don't have the capacity to get involved, and the elite and the high achievers are already doing a great deal. These are the ones that we learn from, but 71% of our communities are in this medium to low level, and this is where we think the greatest impact will be with the environmental, with the Greenest Region Compact going forward. So if I can jump back to this slide, this is a map that is posted on our website. We mapped all of the achievements, and I'm going to go live, I hope, to the map that is on our website. You can see the types of achievements for that particular community. We don't have the details on whether what Wheeling, which I'm scrolling over right now, what their energy achievements were, although we do have that database. But what it does show in aggregate is really interesting. It shows that we only had one community that wasn't doing anything, only one community that had absolutely no programs. But I'm trying to get to Southern Illinois too, so this will pick up for you. But it does show a high level of achievements across the region, and it can be interesting to look at any geographic impact from achievements. If you're interested, and the one that I like to bring up is water. So the larger the dots, the more achievements. But this is one where you can actually see along the Fox River, there is a regional planning effort called the Northwest Water Planning Alliance, and you can see the impact of those efforts that work in Kane, Kendall, and McHenry counties. I thought that was really interesting to look at. But again, to spend some time, if you're interested, with the map there. And let me go back to presenting. There we go. All good? Okay. So that's our interactive map. Oh, there's my highlighted 71% of the communities in that region. And then here is, we didn't want to rank communities because communities are competitive, municipal leaders are competitive, and however, we don't mind showing the top 26 achievers because there really are achievers. And if you can see the top 4, Chicago, Evanston, Oak Park, and Aurora are again quite a bit ahead of everybody else in terms of their achievements. And then we have some ties where you see the bars to be the same width. Those are the same number of achievements per community, and that's why we come up with that awkward number of top 26 achievers. So that's where that comes from. And then the ones that are in blue, all of the top 10, all of the top 10 communities have a sustainability plan. The ones that are in that funny green do not have a sustainability plan that we were able to find, but still some strong achievements there. So it's a pretty good correlation between achievements and sustainability planning. Okay. So the next step, which was again really interesting, so this is reading sustainability plans, and again the intention is to learn from what was done and to try to use the sustainability planning work, which in many cases was quite a bit of effort went into sustainability plans. Some of them were very short, some of them were I think a 1-page or 2-page we found. Some of them were very extensive and based on data and analysis. Some of them were based on community consensus. So in the case of some communities, I know LGIEN had hundreds of community members involved in their sustainability planning. And so to respect all of that good work, and then to really synthesize the diversity of plans across the region and by different municipalities by character, we looked at all of them. And if you can visualize, we also looked at regional and national plans with the idea of aligning with regional and national plans, and I'll get into a little bit of details on what those were. You'll see a chart of them. But if you can picture trying to synthesize all of these plans, I think I have another prompting slide here to describe sorting them into buckets. But of the plans that we did analyze, we looked for goals only because we were really just zeroing in on what are those goals in the sustainability plan. Here's the communities that we found sustainability plans for. We used a couple of sources to get at this, and we may have missed some, but we did the very best we could, looking through 40 of them and analyzing this. We did add displays after the study was completed. So here's where we describe better the buckets. And if you remember, we had GRC plus 2 categories. So we had 7 areas that were constructed for analysis purposes based on our original GRC. What we did here, we did 2 steps. So if you can think of all of those sustainability plans with either a dozen goals or dozens of goals, depending on the complexity of the sustainability plans, we analyzed them. So we sort of plucked them out of wherever they lived in those municipal sustainability plans and sorted them into buckets. First, we did it within the GRC framework, GRC plus 2 framework. So those original 7 categories that we had is air, land, waste, and water, and then the 2 additional categories. And it gets confusing here, so I'll show you. We then forgot all that and reassembled them, so I won't jump ahead, but we did it in 2 places. One, we wanted to compare the achievements as well as the sustainability plans, and then when we threw all that out and started to reorganize them differently, we used that as the framework for the sustainability for the GRC2 is what we did with the next step. So like I said, it's a little confusing with buckets, but here is the complete review of sustainability goals by each community, and you can see some of the really short bars are simple plans. If you look at, I love Woodstock as a very high achiever, Woodstock with lots and lots of goals, and you can see, again, based on a quick look at the colors, where the efforts are. And interestingly enough, if you remember from the environmental achievements, remember how important pink was for the types of where energy was as far as an achievement. There was a lot of it. If you look at the plans going forward, we have energy goals in there, but the category that is most prominent are land-related issues and then sustainability stewardship. So again, a very high-level, equitable view across what's important in communities. And here is the comparison of our state and regional plans, and you may or may not be familiar with some of these, and some of these are a bit of a stretch to actually call them plans. We didn't find as many plans as I thought we would. And the one that is at the far left that is most in common with the with the communities, I shouldn't even say with the Greenest Region Compact, but most in common with community goals is the U.S. Conference of Mayors Climate Protection Agreement, which was a 2005 pledge. But it was a very simple, straightforward, really read of what's on the minds of municipalities. And I like to point to our own Greenest Region Compact, which was the next one over in 2007, where we didn't even really pick up sustainability stewardship, and we had a very strong emphasis on air and water policies. Some of you may be very familiar with the Star Community Rating Index, which is over at the far right. That's more of a new program going forward. But again, this was where we were trying to see where these plans, or where the municipal plans might align with the regional goals, and that might drive funding or policy, or for example, even with the STAR Community Rating Index, those communities that are participating in STAR, it would be really helpful if our Greenest Region Compact would help them with STAR community achievement. So that was the intention of trying to align the local and the regional levels. So here now is the second stage, where we emptied out all the buckets with the 791 goals and threw away our buckets, and then allowed the categories to emerge organically. So we weren't forcing them into our air quality bucket, for example. And there's history that Mayors Caucus has with strong air quality programs through a program years ago we had called Clean Air Counts, which was very successful. But we listened to more what the community plans said and started over. And what we came up with were these 9 category areas, which are different than the ones that we had proposed, and they're different than what some of the municipalities had. So the categories were sorted by the consultant. One person reading all the plans made a decision on what bucket they should go into. And for example, if you look at the category mobility, that's where we put most of the air quality goals that were in the Greenest Region Compact plus 2 categories. We put them all in mobility because that's where most of the municipalities have them, and that's where air quality issues seem to be. Most of the actionable items were related to transportation, so they all went in mobility, or they went in climate change, and that category was also not in the GRC plus 2, but it is in the new version, the GRC 2. The framework going forward. And as you can see, the economic development category was not one that we had thought of or identified in the earlier phases of the study, and likewise with sustainable communities or municipal operations. So many of the categories, waste and recycling, water, wastewater, energy, and land use, stayed the same. You can also see the count of goals per types, and whereas there's a little bit of a shift from the achievements. Land use, land-related achievements were the highest in our achievements inventory. They're also the highest in the goals going forward. So no question, that's what municipalities care about. And then this broader category of sustainable communities, and I'll go through some of the specific goals sooner. That's a little harder to just picture what we mean by that, but those are all of the softer sides of sustainability planning, if you will, not related to anything else, and that's where they all were categorized. So really interesting in terms of guiding us going forward. And I have that in a pie chart as well. This will help us focus efforts. You'll see the specific goals, but this is just the raw count of goals, the number of goals in each of those categories. And some of them are more complex. Not necessarily that the number of goals indicate indeed it's an absolute priority. For example, climate change may be a priority, but there's not as many specific goals that communities can achieve. So again, we're not making judgment on what's important, but it helps a little bit, and you'll see that when we get into some of these categories I'll detail specifically. So to zero in a little bit more on those categories. So in the climate change categories, here we're, again, without editing what we heard in the study, we just simply pulled the goals forward. So greenhouse gas emission, air quality, and adaptation related goals were what we saw. The stewardship, education, and policy you will see in almost all of these categories. So we haven't fully decided how to handle them. Again, without editing, these were the goal categories that we sorted. So economic development and climate change, 2 of the smaller categories. Energy efficiency and renewable energy, the Mayors Caucus has a lot of experience in that, and there are specific goals in there for renewable energy generation and procurement. And again, this ubiquitous stewardship, policy, education, and outreach. Municipal operations, for example, this is a really interesting one, and I'll just tell you how the Greenest Region Compact can and is already working. The intention is that we start to use these expressed priorities to funnel resources to communities. Municipal fleets, for example, in municipal operations, there were 18 goals expressed across the study. So again, of the 29 communities that had sustainability plans, we found 18 municipal fleet-related goals. Well, we also found out that there is funding available for fleet retrofits through a Department of Energy grant called Clean Drive Chicago. So we're already working to maybe align those priorities with a funding source, but that's where the intention would be. So some of these I know off the top of my head, if you're interested, how many goals in each category. Whoops, skipped over one. There's mobility, a more complicated, complex category with goals that are longer term, but common across many municipalities. The sustainable community categories, you can see this is what I said was where some of the softer ones are, like local food, arts and culture, and public health and safety issues. There were some goals in the community plans that were related to quality of life in communities that were softer, and this is where they all ended up. Land use, again, these categories ought to be familiar. Trees and landscaping proved to be popular and important. Parks and open space, likewise, strong priorities with communities. Waste and recycling goals and water and wastewater goals, strong alignments with what those specific goals are. And as I've said before, stewardship policy, education, and outreach almost across the board. So, in conclusion, this was a fun slide, and we did this because we could. We have a lot of data in this study that I'll just put out there could be very useful to other organizations, and we'd love to share this. But, for example, we were able to look at the environmental achievements compared to sustainability planning. And we looked at, so these are not related, just so you know. So the blue bar is achievements, the raw number of environmental achievements. Remember, these are objective based on the 95 achievements that we compared equitably across every municipality that we studied. And the red bar are the planned goals, number of goals. And again, there's no link necessarily between the achievements of those goals and the plan, but you can just see this real interesting comparison of some communities. I think probably the communities where there's progress towards the number of goals, where there's a little closer alignment between what's planned and what's achieved, is probably, those are good sustainability plans to learn from. So again, that was just an interesting one. And as far as the Greenest Region Compact, what we learned. So based on the fact that the Greenest Region Compact, of those communities that signed the Greenest Region Compact in 2007, that actually was in the top 10 environmental achievements across the region. And the link between sustainability planning and achievements, we do believe that a new Greenest Region Compact, or the GRC2, could be influential. And we like this idea of aligning with programs and policies and grant programs and such that would create a more unified efforts towards greater impact. And again, I have this database that's available. For example, I can drill down into this municipal fleet. I can say in aggregate of there are 18 communities that have municipal fleet goals. Right now we're using those communities with sustainability plans and those goals that are expressed in that as a bit of a proxy for the rest of the communities that don't yet have a sustainability plan. For example, we just put in a grant request based on a funder's desire to implement on-the-ground projects in one county. We were able to go in and say these communities have that goal in their sustainability plan and therefore would be eligible for funding. We can also share that if somebody is interested in finding communities that are interested in energy efficiency retrofits or have done those. We have a pretty comprehensive database within the time period in the region that we studied. And then again, we're real interested in targeting our Greenest Region Compact at GRC2 as a template sustainability plan, particularly for the 71% of the achievers in the middle, where we think we can, and we will learn from those high achieving 26. Okay, some good questions coming in, encouraging. So, and I'm just about to wrap up here. So where we're at now is with this framework in place, we're doing outreach and engagement, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. I'm very anxious for your feedback. So we're talking to groups to share this information and to see how people respond to the framework that we have. We also absolutely want help. The goals that we have are actually goal categories. So there's a broad category of saying renewable and procure renewable energy, but we don't have specific goals in there. So this is where we'd like to come back to partner organizations and agencies that have programs and say, is it possible that, for example, those communities that want to procure renewable energy, would it make the most sense for them to simply become an EPA Green Power Communities participant rather than have us create a new program? Why doesn't our goal simply be to become active in that particular program? So for each of our categories, goal categories, we are looking for feedback on some of those specific goals. So welcoming input on that. We are challenged to establish indicators, and I have to say that intimidates me a little bit, but that's how getting our goals in place and then having indicators that are achievable and make sense is one of the later steps. And we do plan on launching this new Greenest Region Compact this coming fall. Is the plan that we will have this ready for adoption and anticipate it being able to grow over time and respond to changes in policies and resources and such. There is intended that this will follow the program that we started with the caucus called Clean Air Counts, which provided recognition and awards to communities. So the intention would be that within the renewable energy category, if that was one of the things that you wanted to pursue, we might offer a couple of steps that would come, you could come in at an introductory level and, get recognized as a bronze community. That's a placeholder recognition, but a stepped-up award program, a couple more strategies that you accomplish would get you a silver and so forth. So that's how we anticipate rolling this out. And there are 2 examples that we know of in New Jersey and Minnesota. So with that, I am going to stop talking and offer you the opportunity to contact me directly, or I think we can jump right into the questions. So.
Yes, we can. Thank you so much, Edith, for that great presentation. I thank you so much. We do have a couple really great questions that we'll start with, and I think kind of the way you've ended it really kind of segues great into Anne's question. So I think we'll start with that one. I do think it's great, though. I just want to point out how you have going through all your research have really taken into account some of the existing programs out there and integrate them into your research, because I think that's really important to communities, that they're being recognized for the work that they're already doing and how that can be incorporated into programming going forward. With that said, as Anne points out, this has been a wealth of information. So from your perspective, Edith, what can you share with us that you haven't already, and with communities who want to know how to get started on at least one initiative as a way to build interest and support for sustainability-oriented planning?
And I don't know that I would zero in on one, but what I am hoping that this will do is that the framework is adaptable to communities. And since we're coming out in September, I'm hoping that that would be worth waiting for. Not that people can't get started on this, but I do have a personal opinion on that. And, but anyway, I am hoping the Greenest Region Compact 2, when it comes out with a framework, will be approachable and achievable for communities. I would say that probably the best first step would be to adopt the Greenest Region Compact when that comes out, and then within that framework would be a host of options for tackling activities as suit a community. Being very practical here, I would say that one of the easiest ways to look at what's a priority is are there resources to get it done? Is it achievable, and are there resources to get it done? And this is while I'm simultaneously finishing out the Greenest Region Compact framework, we are watching opportunities for funding come along, and those are the ones that I'm concentrating on. There's an awful lot of funding potentially available in renewable energy with the renewable portfolio standards, and so I'm putting a little effort into trying to align goals that makes sense for communities. So that's where I would put priorities, and that's a little vague, but energy efficiency is another one. Lots and lots of funding available out there, easy to tackle. Green fleets is one that I hope to round out and have that be an achievable one in the short term. But before I leave that question totally behind, that's based on my data. My personal opinion is that community participation and having broad community leadership is really important, and Corey and I share an interest in environmental commissions or citizen-based advisory groups working within municipal structure. That would be, I think, a really good way to get started, is to start building some momentum with business partners and community members who might start to share enthusiasm for moving forward on sustainability.
And does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's really good to hear about the practical ways to approach it. I just say, okay, well, if it was a worst case scenario, you have one person who believes that, you know, this kind of long range planning and change is possible, but they have lots of others around them, elected officials and other staffers, what have you, maybe not even any other staffers, and they have to kind of prove the worth of planning this way. So I'm thinking, gosh, how do they get started on doing that? How do they kind of show the way to an audience that may be, or other decision makers who may be really skeptical?
Correct. I'd be happy if anybody else has anything to add to that. If anybody else wants to comment on a good first step.
Well, we'll keep that in mind, and I'll go ahead and get to Kathy's question while we're kind of contemplating that. Maybe jot that input down in the chat box. Kathy's looking for what strategies are under consideration to leverage learning opportunities among communities both in the Northeast and downstate communities. What role does staffing play in pursuit and achievement of goals?
So that's a two-stage question, and I'll start with the easier one. So, and maybe this will go back to answering Ann's question. If there's funding and resources available to do something very easily, it's that really helps in the achievement of goals. And the Mayors Caucus manages funding with DCEO and for energy efficiency, and it's just a really easy, practical way that if you don't have a lot of community support for sustainability, you're saving money and you're upgrading, performance of facilities. So that's an easy one for staff to pursue in achievement of goals. I think the harder part is the sustainability planning. I'm not seeing a lot of sustainability planning in communities that either don't have external funds to hire a consultant to do it, or that don't have a staff to pull it together. Because to have a good participatory plan, I think the planning, having staffing is limiting. That's why I'm hoping the Greenest Region Compact is something that could be transferable and could be adopted by communities as a sustainability plan, and that could be recognized by funders and other program partners as such. So that would mean if we could get broad adoption of this, that we could considerably escalate the sustainability planning in the region. And I would say that to answer the second part of your question, that's true for your question about sort of sharing knowledge and learning from Northeast and downstate communities is if it's translatable, if these municipal goals are comparable or achievable of communities throughout the region, throughout the state. I'd love feedback on that. I'd love to have downstate and Northeast communities, look at the specific goals and say that's not going to fit for us, but this might. It would be nice if it were transferable. The Mayors Caucus, just to put it out there, is a membership organization, and we serve our region around the Chicago area, but it doesn't mean that this wouldn't be a tool that would be useful to be shared. And happy to have partners or champions take it on from where we leave off.
And I think that kind of goes to Jennifer's question too. What is the smallest populated community that participated in your research, Edith? I mean,
yeah, and I should look at the population list. I do know the only community that didn't achieve anything in the Chicago area was Holiday Hills, which has a population of 660. But, you know, throughout the 7-county region, we looked at every city and town in the region, and the ones that showed up out of the 7-county region were the ones that kept appearing. Basically, we started with that achievements inventory. If we kept seeing them as environmental achievers, we included them. I'd be happy to share the list if somebody wants to look at it specifically to see what communities participated. But I do know 660 was the smallest one, and I would assume maybe a little higher than that we'd start to see some achievements, higher than 660.
And Kathy was curious about the Fox River water conservation. What motivated that?
That is actually water supply. So those are communities that are groundwater supplied, and as a part of, they're not Lake Michigan. So they're in the status of water supply planning is evolving. So it's getting going in Illinois, my understanding of it, and there was the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, at the behest of the Department of Natural Resources, established something called Water 2050, which was a framework for water supply planning. And there was a recommendation that regions start to work collaboratively to plan for a safe and adequate water supply. And one of the first ones to get together up here anyway was the Northwest Water Planning Alliance. So they're Fox River water users. Good question.
Yeah. Were there any other like mayors caucuses or mayors groups that were looking at this kind of research that, that because they're spread out all over the state as well, that could maybe be partners in this kind of research, or since they're member-based organizations across the state, have a regional effect or a statewide effect, like South Suburban Mayors Association or Will County Governmental League.
Right. Okay, and again, happy if somebody else wants to contribute to the answer to that question. We are the Mayors Caucus is an umbrella for the 9 Chicago area councils of governments. So our leadership is comprised of the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association and the DuPage. So we are made up of those organizations, and so they've been involved in the planning process, and we're also meeting with them individually to get feedback and dialogue on that. Some of the COGs, we call them, had actually adopted the Greenest Region Compact in 2007 or 2008. So some of the councils of governments like South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association and Northwest Municipal Conference are active in their, have staff dedicated to sustainability planning and helping their communities reach sustainability goals.
We probably have time for about one more question. I see Kathy's typing, so we'll give her a minute.
And I welcome if there are other councils of governments or comparable groups that might like to give some feedback on that specific framework. I welcome that. So if anybody thinks of it later or now, let me know.
Have you gotten a sense, Edith, if the participation in sustainability planning for these municipalities translates to the bottom line of their budget based on the wide participation in the stewardship aspect, or more so because of mandates or regulations?
In terms of the planning or the achievements?
Both.
Right. the achievements were, like I said, somewhat heartening to see that the strong environmental achievers they seemed to be adopters generally, so they were, participating in programs or seeking grants, and that seemed to be very equitable across the region. That was very interesting to see that. And as far as sorry, lost track of the question. What was it related to planning?
Yeah.
Or whether there was a translation into the budget in terms of the sustainability planning.
The motivation for them to be involved in the sustainability planning and achievements. Right.
Yeah. Like I said, the achievements seem to be. It was neat to be able to pick up what communities actually care about, whether or not it's green. For example, again, my interest in the citizen commissions. That's not one that we see as an indicator in some of the sustainability programs, or that was part of the Greenest Region Compact, but that's something that doesn't require a lot of budget to do. As far as the sustainability planning, they seem to be very community driven. I don't know that I've seen necessarily that reflect back on the budgets, although some of the communities that have more resources do seem to have the sustainability plans as well and staff available to commit to it. So there is a correlation with better resourced communities and sustainability planning too. Again, why we want to concentrate on the 71%, which is a wide mishmash of communities that might need some help with sustainability planning.